Guys, hurricane season 2025 is knocking on our door, and we already have early predictions, early forecast outlooks from North Carolina State University and Colorado State University. We not yet received the official National Hurricane Center forecast from NOAA. That's not unusual. Theirs tends to come third, and we'll expect it pretty soon. But the numbers are on your screen right now. But if you're listening to our audio podcast, I'll tell you first and foremost that we normally get about 14 average named storms in a season. NC State is calling for a range between 12 and 15. CSU is calling for 17 storms, so at or just above normal. We normally get 7 hurricanes on average, according to climate statistics. NC State has kind of put it in right on the number there, between 6 and 8. CSU going with 9. So again, just a tad above normal in their forecast. Major hurricanes, Cat 3 or above, we normally see 3 of those in a season in the Atlantic Basin. And North Carolina State is calling for 2 or 3, so about on par with average, while CSU is calling for 4, just above average. Frank, I know you've had a chance to look at over these numbers ahead of tonight's show, and what is kind of your thoughts as you're looking at what are 2 very well-respected hurricane season outlooks?
Well, it's about what I expected we'd see. Things have changed this year compared to last year and several recent years as well. Over the last 5 years or so, we've tended to have very warm waters all across the tropical Atlantic, really all across the North Atlantic Ocean. The waters have been above normal, and last year they were way above normal, near record territory for the date. But that has changed over the last 6 months or so. And now, while we still have a good bit of the Atlantic Basin above normal, the eastern tropical Atlantic, and central tropical Atlantic has cooled considerably. And if you want to show my screen share, James, I have a map showing the sea surface temperature anomaly, and that's the current view here. And you can see the Gulf of Mexico mostly warmer than average, Western Gulf of Mexico way above average, Caribbean Sea well above average, a lot of the Atlantic Ocean still above average. But notice how the tropical Atlantic is now mostly cooler than average, or near average at least. And that is a big change from last year. Let's go to last year. Let's see if I can find if they have it last year. There we go. This is this time last year, or April 1st of last year. The whole tropical Atlantic was way warmer than average this time last year. So this year things are different in that the waters are either cooler than average or not as warm as they were last year. Also, there's the lack of a La Nina. Let's take a look at the Pacific Basin here. Tropical East Pacific. There we go. And things have changed here as well. Last year we had a La Nina going back to 24 here. If I can get that to load up quickly, maybe not. But in that actually is 24. Let's look at 25. There we go. The La Nina that we had going on has gone away. We now have actually mostly warmer than average waters over the equatorial East Pacific. It's still cooler than average south of Hawaii. La Nina conditions, where the waters are cooler than average across the equatorial Central and East Pacific, tend to result in an enhanced Atlantic Basin, because you tend to have less vertical wind shear, and you also tend to have a more unstable and more humid environment over the Atlantic Basin, and all that results in you having typically a better environment for tropical cyclones to develop and grow, and so you end up with a more active season during La Nina. And that's what we had last year. But this year, it looks like we're either in neutral conditions or maybe even going to El Nino. El Nino, the opposite's true. You tend to have more vertical wind shear because you have westerly winds aloft over the tropical Atlantic when El Nino is going on in the Pacific. And the air mass over the tropical Atlantic tends to be drier and more stable, and that tends to all limit the number of tropical cyclones you see. So those are 2 big differences from last year, and there are some other things as well. But last year it seemed kind of a slam dunk that we'd have an active season, and there was concern that it would be hyperactive. It turned out to not be hyperactive after all, but it was still a pretty active season. And of course, for us, it only takes one. And in the Carolinas, we had Debbie and Helene, so we had 2 pretty significant storms. Debbie, even though it was only a tropical storm, you don't really want to say only a tropical storm because they can still have some big impacts, and Debbie did. because Debbie caused some very severe flooding in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, and some wind damage too. Of course, Debbie was a hurricane when it made landfall in Florida, but quickly weakened to a tropical storm. And of course, we all know Helene, so we won't go over that again. But Helene, of course, was a big storm for us here in the Carolinas. So it's no surprise that they're calling for still an active season, because overall the water temperatures across the Atlantic are above normal. Overall, it looks like we'll have either kind of neutral conditions for ENSO and no La Nina or El Nino to deal with this year, probably. So that should result in an active but not hyperactive season, and it should be less active than last year was.
Well, certainly last year was a doozy, and we are hoping that is not the case again this year. Let me take a question that Jay, I think that is here in Charlotte, has put in. Does the NHC, National Hurricane Center, ever give an official estimate count of tropical cyclones? So what we can expect, Jay, from the National Hurricane Center when they come out with their outlook is the number of named tropical cyclones. So once it receives a name, once it becomes a tropical storm at 37 miles an hour, 38 miles an hour, that is when it gets a name, and that's when it'll also be accounted for in their forecast outlook. So unless, Frank, you remember some line further down and buried in their report, I don't know that we get a total number of depressions per se, but I think it's that naming threshold, I think, where they count them, right, in their outlook.
Right. I mean, they track everything. They track the
Sure.
number of depressions too, and that all goes into the official hurricane database. But what the actual seasonal outlooks and forecasts call for: the number of named storms, number of hurricanes, the number of major hurricanes, and of course this metric called accumulated cyclone energy, which just simply is a measure of the amount of energy expended by a storm during its life cycle, and you sum it up for each storm for the season, and that's what the forecast is for. And some entities also try to give an idea of what parts of the basin will be more active, like Colorado State. In their forecast, they give a forecast for the amount of ACE they expect to occur west of 60 degrees longitude, which the western part of the basin is where all the people are, right, and all the land is in the Atlantic that gets hit by hurricanes. Not all of it, but almost all of it. So that's an important thing to keep track of as well. But there's not really a forecast for how many depressions, tropical depressions, will occur, or how many potential tropical storms will occur, and no real forecast from most entities. I think Joe Bastardi at Weatherbell tries to give an idea of where the storms are going to make impact, where they will go. Not sure how much skill he has with that, and that's not saying he does or doesn't. I just haven't really tracked and kept track of how well he does with that. But
well, speaking of tracking things, Frank, I don't know if you even had a chance to take a look at this. This came out, I think, like after 5 o'clock today, but the National Hurricane Center did come out with their review of the 2024 hurricane season. We have tweeted this. I haven't even gone through it all yet. There are quite a number of pages, as you might imagine. But, right off the bat, we can tell you that last year, the hardworking men and women at NOAA's National Hurricane Center issued 347 official forecasts for that 2024 hurricane season. Their skills have gotten us to a point where the official track forecast errors have decreased significantly over the long term and are up to 75% smaller than they were a few decades ago. The official forecast track, they write, was very skillful and beat all of the computer models at 96 and 120 hours out. Their mean official intensity errors for the Atlantic Basin in 2024 were higher than the previous 5-year means, from 12 to 96 hours out, and lower at 120 hours out. And that is just page 1 of this document. So we'll get a chance to kind of go through this a little bit more in detail. But, I think the short version, of course, is that we know every year that forecast cone gets smaller and smaller. And when we get to hurricane season this year, we'll hopefully look for some of the best forecast cones from the National Hurricane Center we've had in years. And once again, we saw this in testing last year. We'll see it more of this year.